Take it from here, Mark.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, alongside my trusted, awesome companion, Michael Liebowitz, the co-chairman of the American Capitalist Party, and the host. Wait a minute.
I don't know about companion.
I don't mean companion in that sense of the word. I mean companion as in friend. Although I guess it can be taken to be that as well. But also the host of his own great show, The Rational Egoist. And today we got lots of news that sort of scared the crap out of me. Last night or this morning, I don't know, I texted you. I'm like, you got any good news for me? And this morning I woke up to a avalanche of ass. I have to say, it's just like, this does not bode well for America. None of this stuff bodes well for America if we keep on this path. And I want to take it item by item by item. I want to go in the order that you gave it to me, because I think it's super important, because we're going to start with something epistemological. And that is news from Axios that reveals the standard of Trump's judgment for whether or not to continue tariffs with the country or not. So I'm going to read directly from this little paragraph from Axios. And if Rand wrote this for one of her villains in Atlas Shrugged, it couldn't be any more perfect. This is how exact this is, and telling this is, and I hope our audience can understand this as well. From Axios, instinctively more than anything else, quotes Trump, Trump told reporters when asked how he'll determine tariff exemptions, quote, "You almost can't take a pencil and paper. It's really more of an instinct, I think, than anything else." Now, this is, I have to say, amongst the scary news out there, this frightened me more than anything else. Michael, can you sort of express why this might frighten me? Can you look into my heart as my companion and tell me?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can put it very simple. The fate of the economy is contingent on Trump's feelings. That's what it boils down to. And, you know, Mark, like I keep seeing these posts. I didn't vote for this. Yes, you did. If you couldn't see this is what this man was, then you have a serious problem. Right? I saw it in 2015. I don't know how anyone doesn't see it. How is it a surprise that he says he's going to go by his feelings, his instincts, right? It's absolutely absurd. It's very scary, and it's very dangerous. And, you know, with Congress having delegated much of the power to him, or, you know, to the executive, which I don't even think is constitutional, to be quite frankly with you. But nevertheless, they've done it. So he can, you know, on his whim yesterday, the stock market goes up. And then on his whim, it can go down based on how he feels. This is absolutely reprehensible.
Yeah, let's explain that a little bit, because modern culture tells us, you know, any important question that you need answering. You know, for, let's say you want to know what vocation you want. You want to know who the right person is to marry. Life-changing events in your life, anybody will say, what's your instinct tell you? What does your heart tell you? And that's what you got to go with. Our popular culture thinks that, one, human beings have instincts, two, that they're a sum of knowledge, and three, that you should follow them. But objectivists don't look at the world that way. Let's talk about that, and talk about, because you expressed basically Trump is saying, I'm going to go by my feelings. It's a gut thing, which most people would think, hey, that's what we've been told all our lives, is actually a sum of knowledge. It's like an immediate conduit to the truth. Why is that not so? And why do objectivists think differently?
Well, as human beings, we have to rely on our reason if we're going to survive. Reason is our means of knowing, and it's our means of survival. It's how we learn what to do, what's good for us, and what's bad for us. Now, oftentimes, our emotions are lightning quick indicators. They're in us based on conclusions that we've already come to, such as, you know, is this good for me? Is this bad for me? So in common language, people will say things like, oh, I felt it was the right thing to do. Like if I want to go see a movie, right? Suppose you say to me, hey, you want to go out to the movies? What are we going to go see? And you say, my gut tells me this is going to be a good movie, right? But it's not really your emotions that are telling you that. It's a lot of calculations and a lot of thinking or non-thinking that you've done in your life that have led you to understand that this is the type of movie that you're going to like. And that can apply to an abundance of things.
Then why not tariffs?
Well, here's the problem. Because a movie, for one, isn't that important of a decision in life. So if you happen to be wrong about it, big deal. You just say, damn, I was wrong about this one. And you also don't have a lot of information about it. Secondly, and most importantly, even with stuff like movies, you still would say afterwards, well, okay, I was wrong, and reason through why you were wrong. What did they mislead you in the advertisement? Was it based on, say it's a great actor, but now he underplayed? But you have to think if you're going to guide yourself through this world. This is a monumental decision. And the key here is Trump's thinking or lack thereof on this subject have led him to very wrong conclusions about tariffs. So his emotional responses are going to be dead wrong when it comes to tariffs. Now, I have to address something that's in the chat here, in the comment section. Alan Thomas says, Mike, you're right and you're wrong. They may have voted for something else, not this, and they can say that they no longer stand on their vote. It takes air away from his dumbass mandate argument. Okay. I get that somebody can say, I didn't know this was going to happen. My point is, you should have. It's not hard to tell what's coming with this guy. He's been in the public eye since the 70s. He was all over the tabloids when I was a kid and all over talk shows, Oprah and whatnot. In the 2000s, he had his own show, The Apprentice. For years, you could watch it and see what kind of human being he was. Then he's running for president and he tells you what he is. You can see in real time what he is. So I plead ignorance. It just doesn't hold weight with me. And the mandate argument is destroyed anyway. It's a fiction. This claim, well, the American people voted for him. Most people voted for him. Bullshit. 49% of the people that voted for him. So even out of the people that voted, which I think is like 65% of the country, not even half of those supported him. And Kamala got 47.5, something along those lines. So it's very split right there. Never mind all the people that didn't vote. There's no mandate. That's a crock of shit. And even if you do have a mandate, your mandate doesn't override the Constitution of the United States of America. Right? So by and large, Alan, I think you're great, but I really think that you're wrong about this one.
Yeah, at the very least, you could see he was a capricious, malignant narcissist who was anti-intellectual. You could see that from the very beginning. He's not a thinker. No. And so I would suspect that his instincts wouldn't be informed, so what we're saying, his immediate sensibility about things wouldn't be informed by proper information. I mean, we could go down a whole path with the concept of instincts and with respect to emotions being lightning fast assessments of what's real or what's true or what's not, because there are cases, in fact, when that's true. But I think that requires
way too much. Yeah.
I mean, it not only takes us so far afoot, but it gets into the intersection of philosophy and psychology. But I think in order for that to be true, you have to be wired properly. In other words, you have to have made logical conclusions all the way down the line, and
which he has not. Yeah.
Which he has not, and which most of us have not. Most of us have to retrain our minds and realign our inner life and our values and our response to values through a proper rational outlook on the world. I know I had to do that. My instincts took me in all the wrong directions, as yours did early in life too. And now we have to control that stuff and mitigate, the violence into our own inner core through reason. So you and I know, if anybody out there, especially you, the intersection of psychology and philosophy and how important it is to inform your values, and then you can have emotions that are appropriate to the moment, as opposed to what Trump is doing, which is entirely capricious. All right, so that's a scary thing. It's a scary thing that he's not rational about who's going to be exempt from tariffs and who isn't. We have another thing coming up here. Now, this was tweeted out by Alex Norizeth. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly. Noreste, sorry.
Heads up, on May 21st, and I will be there, he is debating at the Soho Forum, Dave Smith, on immigration.
Love that. The Soho Forum would be a great place, totally controlled. I hope he kicks Dave Smith's
I'm going to
ass.
make a prediction. I've read this guy. I've interviewed him. He is not to be taken lightly. I think that he is going to beat Dave soundly. That is my prediction.
Good. Dave has an inflated view of himself and his skills, so I can't wait to see him be deflated. But he says something here that I think is true, respecting Carolyn Lovett's a confirmation at a White House press hearing that if they find legal means to do it, they will deport American citizens who are criminals. So Alex actually says the Trump administration is considering deporting American citizens. Nativism will make America a tyranny. Wow. I mean, it's a huge thing to say. The fact that Levitt is confirming more or less this, if we find the legality, if we find that legal loophole that we can hang our hat on, American citizens who commit crimes can be deported. Let's talk about that. Now let's unpack that a little. This is scary.
There's a lot.
This is scary.
Let me give you a quick something that's comparable, but no, and I don't want to say it's comparable. What it is it's slightly similar, but the degrees are vastly different. So in 1999, Connecticut had a severe overcrowding in the prison system. So the governor signed a deal, and they started to send Connecticut inmates out of state to Virginia. What the hell was the name of it? Wallens Ridge, I believe, was the name of the prison. And the way that they did this, right? Like, you didn't know ahead of time you were getting transferred there. They would come all of a sudden in the middle of the night. Midnight, right? Lights go on, boom, goon squad, we call them, come. That's basically like they're like a SWAT team within the facility. Come, go to a guy's door, get out here, get against the wall, handcuff you, and you're gone. That was such a scary time for me, and I get it. Okay, yeah, we were all convicted felons, and I don't really feel much sympathy for the guys that were transferred to D.C. either. But I will say this, it started off, only the most dangerous are going to be transferred to Virginia. This doesn't affect everybody. Bullshit, it didn't affect everybody. First of all, it affected everybody because they didn't stick to their guns that it's only going to be dangerous people. So now everybody's worried about it because there's no criteria, there's no way to know. That's a very traumatic thing to do to people. Now, when you expand that to what they're talking about, you're talking about sending people to prisons out of the country where we have no oversight. There's no guarantee these people's constitutional rights are going to be protected. Nothing. Trump says that he couldn't even get this guy. I can't get it back. He's not in our jurisdiction anymore. He's under El Salvadorian jurisdiction. So
now that's another scary thing right there.
Yeah.
Not only does he make a deal wherein anybody can say, well, you made deals with them, so you can probably make a deal to get them back, but he's actually refusing. I mean, that's more or less a refusal to bring a guy back into the country who was illegally seized, robbed of his constitutional right to due process, and exported out of the country where he is now essentially disappeared. All right. That is super scary.
Right. And that can be happening to American citizens. And given that they made this mistake, and given the amount of people that I know, now I don't want to overdo it. Most people in prison are guilty, but there are innocent people, right? I don't know if it's 1%, 2%, I don't know what it is, but there is a percentage that are innocent. So I would argue that even if you send the most heinous, guilty person out of the country, that's dangerous and it's a violation of his rights. Never mind if you make a mistake and send some innocent person to one of these other countries. This is really scary stuff. They are pushing the boundaries for executive authority, for what they can get away with. And unfortunately, a lot of people are quiet about it. You know, Mark, I have this really strong dilemma that goes on inside me. I don't know if dilemma is the right word, but I'll use it anyways because I think it captures it enough. I really don't like talking about Trump. I really don't. I like discussing ideas. I like discussing how to move forward. But I really have always thought this guy and his cult following are a real danger to the country. So what do? Do I not talk about Trump and just talk about other stuff while this guy's, putting the final nails in the coffin over here? Or do I talk about it and have people, oh, you're always talking about Trump. You're always talking about Trump.
No, I told the guy, you use it. So go ahead.
Yeah. I told the guy this morning, I said from 2008 to 2016. Now, granted, I was in prison, but I argued with inmates. I argued with staff all the time about Obama, all the time criticizing Obama. And I asked them, if you were there, would you have told me I spend too much time criticizing Obama? My guess is no. So why would I hold Trump to be beyond criticism when I wouldn't hold Obama above criticism or Biden above criticism, especially when I think Trump is worse?
Look, so we can use Trump's bad news that we'll likely have lots of as a springboard to talk about the positive things and what the Capitalist Party stands for, which is definitely not this. Ray says something. I love Race's post, by the way. Thank you, Race, for always.
He's great.
Being a great member of the capitalist digital army, posting all the time out there, getting the word out, fighting the commies wherever you can because they deserve to be fought. He says, thankfully, there's no legal way to do it. Once someone is a citizen, that's it. They're here to stay. But I wonder. I mean, they had to go all the way back to 1798 to find the law. And then they had to pretend that Tren de Aragua is a terrorist group, an actual invading foreign force, in order to make this law, I guess, sit well with the American public and give them the legitimacy to do these mass deportations in the way that they're doing without due process. So I have no faith that anybody in government, and I don't think our founding fathers would want us to have faith, that anybody in government can't find a loophole or a way in which to persecute the citizenry and to expand their power. Would you have faith in that, Michael?
No, I would not. And I've simply seen too many things and read about too many circumstances throughout history where government officials have violated the law, violated the Constitution. As you said, they went back to 1798 in a completely bastardized interpretation of this law in order to do this. These people are not concerned with truth. They're not concerned with law. And let me just say, Mark, I think it's absolutely amazing how, Trenta de Agua, whatever it is, that just rolled right off your tongue. That was nice.
Did it?
Oh, yeah, it was great.
I'm a man of many languages, 1.5. Yeah, that's super scary. So the fact that they can contort the law to mean whatever they want it to mean and pass that off on the citizenry to do bad things to people, and then it sort of flies with people because they're criminals, they're gang members. That's how the state grows its power, isn't it? By claiming it's doing something in the interest of the people, by protecting the population, protecting them from themselves usually, but they always do it in the name of the good. So whenever you see a persecuted minority, I would be more wary than supportive of the group that's persecuting them, because it seems like the federal government expands itself by taking a minority that's unpopular and making their persecution popular and then legalizing it. And that's sort of what seems to be happening today. And look, individual rights is supposed to be about protecting the unpopular. I mean, literally Madison used the terms obnoxious when he described the types of people that individual rights were meant to protect. And as Rand would say, the smallest minority in the world is you and I. It's the individual. And that's what the American Capitalist Party stands for, protecting. So there's no American Capitalist Party platform or human being in the American Capitalist Party that should abide this at all. Even if you think that, they're deporting bad guys, even non-citizens who are bad guys that are still in our country come under the umbrella of due process. Yeah. You may not like that, and it may make deporting them, to their native countries super inconvenient and long and somewhat costly. but we are either living by our principles or dying by divorcing ourselves from those principles. And I would rather stick to the principles. What do you want to say, Mike?
I want to say, speaking of principles, and this is an excellent opportunity, I believe, for the American Capitalist Party, because if you go back and you think about the COVID lockdowns, many of the people who spent a lot of time rightfully bitching about COVID lockdowns and COVID policies, right, are perfectly okay with this type of stuff. With it, deporting people, sending them to El Salvador. Maybe we'll deport American citizens. Let's put some tariffs on people, taxes, whatever. They don't see it's the same principle, that the government doesn't have the authority to do this, legitimate authority, I mean, that there are violations of rights. Meanwhile, some of the same people who were very supportive of the lockdowns because of the greater good or whatever, now are raising hell over Trump. So you have two sides of just inconsistent, unprincipled people, and many times it just devolves into rank tribalism. Whereas with the American Capitalist Party, we have principles, so we would oppose both lockdowns and these deportations based on the principle of individual rights and constitutionalism.
Absolutely. Tribalism rules the day, and people seem to be grouping together and fighting for their preferences. And even if their preferences are contradictory or they're mutual, just under, the preferences seem different on the surface, but the actual thing connecting them, the line connecting them is very consistent. Look, Trump derangement syndrome goes both ways, man. There's people on the left who are absolutely crazy, Trump crazy, and there's people on the right who are Trump crazy. I have a friend in Colorado, love him. Maybe you're watching out there, but you are Trump deranged. You cannot be convinced that your guy is not only not a decent human being, but a terrible politician, and does not have the interests of the American people in his mind, nor does he care about the Constitution. I can't convince you of that no matter what I say. You have Trump derangement syndrome too. And anybody on the right who is just following lockstep with this guy, the people on Fox News that are praising all the horrible things that this guy is doing, they have Trump derangement syndrome as well.
You said they think he's a good guy. That's an interesting point, and it's a good place for me to say this, that on Monday I will be debating William Swig from the Ayn Rand fan club on that very proposition. He is taking the position that Donald Trump is a good man and a good president. And I will be debating him Monday right here at 12 o'clock on the Capitalist Corner.
Oh, can't wait to see that. That's going to be great. That's awesome. So we have another story that Tim Pool tweets this out. He retweets this out with the title "Fucking Epic." Now, Tim Pool is an interesting
jerk.
He's a mix of characters, isn't he? I mean, I went on his show and talked for about 3 hours. I thought I might have convinced. I'm not quite sure where he stood. He's sort of a libertarian Trumpster guy, sort of leave me alone. I mean, he lives on a compound in like Maryland or something, and it's sort of self-sustained, so he's got that libertarian anarchist vibe to him, but he's a MAGA guy, right? Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's Tim Pool.
I channeled my inner Tim Pool for a second.
You did. Thank you very much. Well, he under fucking epic, he retweets this little press conference by Kash Patel, who we all know is the head of the FBI now. And he gives remarks after announcing a seizure of 48,400 pounds of illicit narcotics worth over $509 million in the Port Everglades. He goes on to say something while he's talking that sort of freaked me out a little bit. Now, I'm going to have to paraphrase it because I don't want to go through Kash Patel's entire speech there. But in the middle of talking about, spiking the football in the end zone, about how they're, taking care of this drug war that will never end. It's, we know that it's ridiculous. It never ends and just becomes more and more violent and enables the government to take more and more of our rights. He said, here's what happens when you unleash the power of the police. Yeah. Okay. Michael, I know there's a statistic out there somewhere about home invasions. You know how police can surround your house and in the middle of the night bust in. I mean, I forget the exact statistic, but since the drug wars started, I mean, these types of home invasions were extremely rare. When the drug war happens, they are now enlisted in the thousands per year, where these people can come to your home in the middle of the night, bust through your door with guns, shoot your dog, maybe even shoot you because you don't know what the heck is going on, all based on the possibility that you are dealing or in possession of illicit drugs. Now, the right loves to talk about the cartels and how dangerous they are. They're now categorizing them as a terrorist group, so I'm sure they can expand more federal power by the use of that terrorist group thing. But really, in fact, what has made the cartels powerful? It seems to me that what's made the cartels powerful is the same thing that made a little group of Sicilians who came here to protect their neighborhoods, in various places, an international crime syndicate. And that's prohibition. Prohibition made the mob what it was. So the government created Al Capone. They made Al Capone what he was. And it seems like the government is making the cartels into these powerful international crime syndicates. Why? How is that happening? How has the government done that?
Because people are stupid. I don't know. I don't really know how else to put it. They just don't learn the lessons of history. I think a lot of it has to do with. So I'll tell you a personal story of mine, and I think this captures the dynamic that largely controls this on a large scale, writ large. My mother was a heroin addict, right? Heroin addict, that was her main drug. She did other drugs, but that was her main drug. My grandmother was an alcoholic who was also addicted to prescription Ativan.
Oh.
My grandmother always looked down on my mother because it was heroin. It wasn't alcohol. To her, alcohol was, I guess, acceptable, presentable, whatever. And I think that is largely the reason, because most people can see themselves, their dad, their mom, their friends, whomever, drinking alcohol. But heroin is the other people, right? That's not them. They're not experiencing that. It just seems it's so horrible. It's awful for, anybody would ever do such a thing. When in reality, if you put side by side the effects of heroin and the effects of alcohol, alcohol is actually worse. It does more to the body. When you're addicted to it, you can actually die from delirious tremens. So,
Did you know there was a doctor who used to have a show on the radio called Dr. Dean Adele, and this is where I first heard that addiction to alcohol is actually more deadly for you than addiction to heroin. Aside from the bloodborne things that you can get from carrying needles and stuff, heroin has no really bad effects on the organs of your body.
And that stuff's largely the effect of it being illegal. Right? It's illegal, so you're getting stuff in the drug, impurities and whatnot. Right. Now that they have needle exchanges and stuff, they've cut down largely. But back, in the day, they didn't. You're getting needles. You only got one. You got you and your three friends. You end up sharing it, whatever.
Yeah.
So a lot of the harm caused that people attribute to being caused by drugs is the effect of the war on drugs. Somebody the other day was talking about drugs. I think maybe my girlfriend's mom. Talking about how horrible fentanyl is, and I said, I wish they would just sell it in supermarkets or convenience stores if they wanted to. You would have so much less harm done that way. But the primary reason that to be against the war on drugs is because of the massive rights violations that take place. You're violating the rights of consumers, sellers, and all the people that happen to get caught in the net, which is quite a few.
Right, and also making it illicit attracts a certain type of customer and attracts a certain kind of businessman into that illicit practice. So you're not only violating the rights of people to trade as they see fit, you're also now introducing elements of violence to transactions that wasn't there before. And that's why you have the cartels hanging people in the middle of this in border towns as examples. They hang them up by cranes, and they make physical examples of them, terrorizing the local populations, because now violence is a part of the package in the exchange. You want to rob the cartels of their power. legalize drugs. Okay, then you could use all that law enforcement to actually go after terrorists or to go to fight wars for us if we should need them. They don't have to be they don't have to be violating our rights with illegal asset forfeiture. They don't have to be violating our rights by illegally tapping our phones or listening into our conversations or checking our internet, which is going to be another topic here later today, which is extremely frightening. They don't have to violate our rights anymore. Now it can be a legal exchange between willing customer and willing seller, and that's the way it should be. Now this is a scary proposition for some people because it means legalizing drugs that are associated with so much evil. In part, as you said, because the government has created the atmosphere for this kind of stuff to happen. Now that's going to be a hard sell it's a little bit of a hard sell for us, but we have to keep hammering home the point that the government has made this the hazard that it is, and the government almost always makes things more hazardous, and that they introduce force into every exchange, and that's what we want to mitigate. That's what the Capitalist Party is trying to mitigate. Do you have anything further to say about that?
I just have a question for Alan Thomas. He says invest in mental health and social supports instead. I'm just curious what he means by that. Does he think that the government should be investing in mental health and social supports? Or does he mean that, communities and individuals should be doing it? I'd just like to see his answer if he types it. But you can move on now to the next topic.
Well, I just wanted to, you gave me this little note from a Mont Pelerin conference for Deirdre McCluskey. If anybody hasn't read Deirdre McCluskey, do you like her? Do you like her work, Deirdre McCluskey's work?
What I've seen, yeah. I haven't read her books, but I have seen the articles that she's written in Reason Magazine and whatnot. You ever want to read a very interesting story of government overreach and the therapeutic state? In Thomas Saz's book, Faith and Freedom, the last chapter is dedicated to what happened to Deirdre McCluskey.
Oh, you'll have to tell me more about this. This might be a story I know and forgot, but I have read one of her books. It's up here in one of my books.
Well, okay. Well, first, do you know that Deirdre McCluskey used to be Donald McCluskey?
Oh, that's right.
And yes. when Donald McCluskey told his family that he wanted to live his life as a woman, they did what tyrants everywhere do. They don't like your choices. They don't like your decisions. They had him committed. And there was a lot more to it that I don't recall right now. But the point is, it was just a very, again, people thinking that they know the answers. They know how other people should be living their lives, even though those people aren't violating anybody's rights. The answer, call the police, have them put away.
And if that had lasted, then we would be out so much amazing economic thinking, because she is truly a fantastic intellectual. You should read her stuff if you get a chance. She's a true thinker, a very honest intellectual, and a great advocate for liberty. In fact, I wanted to read this last comment of hers from the speech that she gave at the Mont Pelerin conference. I think I'm sort of getting it from the right area. She says, "What we know, as another president of the society, James Buchanan, said, is not engineering, but constitutions. Yet even Jim may have been a little too constructivist. We learned from the old and new assaults on liberalism that good politics depends not so much on institutions as it does on the moral sentiments supporting the institutions. Add institutions and stir, I've noted, is not a recipe for prosperity. If people of malice take over a nation by coup or by vote, no structure of institutions such as the American or Brazilian Constitution can help. Not much." I love that comment. That whole concept is great, because it's talking about proper proper governance is, of course, rests upon a moral foundation. Now, this is why the cynics, the anarchists, the libertarians, because they don't acknowledge this concept, say, what constitution has ever worked? Well, they don't understand what those principles have to be based on and grounded upon. This is so absolutely true, and especially now that we have somebody in office who wants to work off of his instincts and not what the Constitution mandates him to do, who wants to work in the name of nationalism and not in the name of individual rights. We have a moral principle as the American Capitalist Party. What is our fundamental moral principle that grounds every single action we would do in government?
Individual human life is the standard of moral value.
Correct, which translates into the political concept of individual rights, and nothing goes beyond that. Anything that contradicts that is a non-starter politically. And everything that we've been discussing so far, from the deportation of people, of even aliens without due process, the potential deportation of citizens, even criminal citizens, Trump's reliance on emotional whim over reason, all of these things are the antithesis of what the Capitalist Party stands for. So this makes fertile ground for us to discuss all the positive things. Like Deirdre McCloskey here acknowledges, social systems, political systems are based on ethics. And that's where the Capitalist Party, I think, comes in super strong.
Mark, let me tell you a story. I may have told you this before. I may have even said it on here, but I'm sure there's people listening that didn't hear it. I used to, when I was incarcerated, there was this group called the Alternative to Violence Project. And we had inmate facilitators, of which I was one. And we did monthly workshops for the prison population. It's like, to teach them nonviolent conflict resolution, that sort of thing, dealing with anger, So I would look around at the other facilitators, and most of them weren't living very ethical lives. And I would argue with them that if we're not living what we're preaching, we're just looked at as frauds, and we can't help anybody in these groups. We have to be the exemplars so they can see. Otherwise, we just look like hypocrites, and nobody likes hypocrites. I couldn't get anybody to change, so I said, I came up with the idea. Brilliant idea. Joking. I said, well, why don't we get a code of ethics? And we'll agree to the code of ethics, and we'll agree that if you don't stick by this code of ethics, you can no longer be a facilitator. So we drafted a great code of ethics. Everybody agreed to it. It was wonderful. I said, okay, now it's great. Now people are going to go by this. Sure enough, they didn't go by it. I brought it up in the meeting, and I'm like, look, we agreed to this. And you know what I was told? You're being too rigid. And the point is, it does not matter. You could put any words on paper that you want. If the moral foundation of the organization isn't sound, whatever, organization, town, city, country, state, doesn't make a difference. If the people do not have the character that's necessary to drive what you're trying to do, it doesn't matter. And, that's why this argument that we're making for liberty, it just has so many talons, right? So it's like, the octopus or whatever the hell those things are, that tentacles, stretching out. You have to make moral arguments, political arguments, economic arguments. There's so much, but it all begins with the moral argument, with having moral clarity, a rational morality that is a guidance for all of us to live by.
Absolutely. I was arguing with a commie yesterday. Yes, I chose to argue with commies on my birthday. It was crazy. Sitting here with my peaceful pup, who you just got a glimpse of, who now wants to go down and wander around on the floor. I chose to spend time going around in circles with commies. But one of the guys, I use that term loosely, because I'm sure he has man boobs. One of the guys said something like, "Who's morally perfect?" You know how they don't like us talking about morality. The commies don't like us talking about morality. They think it's irrelevant, and yet they claim to be moralists. And he's like, who do you know anybody who's perfectly moral? I said, why can't I be perfectly moral? And he was like, you're just a narcissist. Well, I don't define, the great thing about objectivism is it doesn't define an object outside of its nature. So it doesn't define perfection by being without error, because it understands that the concepts, we understand that human beings are prone to error. They have to check their premises, as Rand would say over and over again, right? It's one of her famous sayings. You always have to check with reality. You have to check in, take the temperature of reality, and see if your conclusions are actually in sync with reality. And that includes your moral conclusions all the time. So you're not, I can't say that I'm perfect in the sense that I don't make mistakes. Of course I do, but that's not how I gauge moral perfection. Do I Do I endeavor to be honest in every aspect of my life? Yes. Do I endeavor to stick to the principles that I've rationally considered over a period of years to be reflective of a good, thriving human rational life? Yes, I do. And so it's possible for an objectivist to be heroic in that sense. It's possible for an objectivist to be perfect in that sense, as opposed to mystical concepts of ethics, which which one define ethical codes outside of the nature of human beings, and make it impossible for the human being to aspire to moral perfection. So, which has to end in self-defeat, low self-esteem, and chronic suffering. Because you can be morally perfect, folks, if you stick to the virtues of objectivism. You can be morally perfect. Now, that doesn't mean you're a narcissist to say that. It doesn't mean you're a bad person to say that. What do you think about that, Michael?
I think that there's a confusion between moral perfection and infallibility.
Infallibility.
Right. We are not infallible. The problem is when you create a moral code that's not based on reason and reality, and it's impossible to practice, then of course, if you claim moral perfection, you're wrong. But when a moral code is based on reality, based on the demands of human nature, it's very possible, but you're never going to be infallible. Morally perfect, possible. Infallibility, not.
And Rand gave us an example of that in Howard Rourke. I mean, Howard Rourke was a morally perfect individual. And Jesus was a morally perfect individual according to Christian premises as well. I can never be Jesus, but I can certainly be Howard Rourke. I may not live up to the level of talent that Howard Rourke had or the level of confidence that he had in himself, but I can certainly be morally perfect. And I may be totally fallible in lots of ways and make tons of errors in judgment, but I could be morally perfect. All of that's possible to any commies who have the guts to listen to this, which I doubt they do. I have to go very quickly, so I'd like to get this one last thing done before I go, because I think it's really, 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 really scary. So let's try to put a good spin on it with our capitalist interpretation of where this should actually be going. So this is from Dispatch. The Department of Homeland Security announced plans on Wednesday to begin monitoring immigrants' social media accounts for anti-Semitic content, quote, as grounds for denying immigration benefit requests. Now, according to a notice from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the move is intended to protect the homeland from extremists and terrorist aliens, including those who support anti-Semitic terrorism, violent anti-Semitic ideologies, and anti-Semitic terrorist organizations, including Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. The new policy will empower immigration authorities to factor in anti-Semitic social media posts when considering status of green card applicants and student visa holders. But it said homeland from extremists and. So it's like, I'm an extremist.
Right. There is a big problem with this. I think it was Potter Store, but I may be wrong, that said, I don't know what obscenity is. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And Ayn Rand had a big problem with that. And she said the problem is when they're allowed to decide what's obscenity and what isn't of artistic or scientific value. It means they get to decide what is of scientific and artistic value. Now, I may not have that exact, but I've got the essence of it correct. So there's so many problems here. First of all, the government's going to be scrolling through people's social media accounts. I don't really care for that idea. Then they're going to get to decide who's anti-Semitic and who's not. Now, somebody, the immediate image that comes up are goose-stepping Nazis, right? And we say, no, we don't want them in. But what are they saying? Is it somebody who says the Israeli government is wrong? Is it somebody who criticizes a Jewish person? What is their criteria going to be to judge anti-Semitism? I don't want them deciding that. I don't want them deciding on the meaning of such an ambiguous term as extremism. Extremism in regard to what norm and in what topic? It's another one of those things where people will look at it and say, I don't like anti-Semites, therefore this is good. They don't understand the people that do that. I don't know that those people are in our audience, but the people that do that don't grasp that it always comes back around. It just grows the behemoth, the Leviathan state, and it always comes back around when you don't want it to. You give the government that kind of power, and it will use it, and it will use it against you.
Yeah, and how does it use that power? It uses it by non-explicit language. It uses it by these types of labels: anti-Semite, extremist, that can be interpreted in a dozen different ways. Rand talked about how laws need to be explicit and easily understood. They need to be clearly defined so that people know when they are doing something wrong. I hate anti-Semites. As you know from reading my Twitter feed, I am at war with anti-Semites all the time. I'm at war with pro-Hamas people, pro-Palestinian protesters, pro-Houthi jerk-offs, commies, the whole 9 yards. You know, it would be easy for me to give into my emotional life and say, yeah, surveil these sons of bitches because they're against Americanism, because now the newest line in the commie thinking is we're patriots. And I say, no, you're not. Communism is antithetical to Americanism. And they don't understand what I'm saying there, of course, because it confuses, it screws up their new narrative, which is to claim that communism is actually compatible with constitutional republicanism.
Yeah.
But I could say, because I don't like them, yeah, surveil Hinkle, surveil these guys. These are the terrible individuals. They're supporting terrorism, yada, 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 yada. But, you know, in the end, they still, as American citizens, have the right to due process. You still, as the government, have to jump through multiple hurdles in order to get a warrant against them and then actually go through legal proceedings in order to investigate them. That's how you mitigate force, folks. That's how you mitigate violence, and that's how you keep government in its lane, is by shackling it. It's a force regulator, guys, and we regulate it through constitution, through a strict, explicit constitution, and through compelling our legislators to make strict, explicit laws that anybody can understand. The Constitution is only a few pages long. You can almost post it in any square, and any individual with minimal literacy can understand what the Constitution means. They're nothing like the omnibus bills that are 80,000 pages long and filled with legalese that nobody could understand if you tried. It's like reading Foucault. You're not going to be able to understand it. All right. You know, but a true representative republic is clean and clear in its legislation. This has so much vagary, folks. Even if it appeals to your emotional life, do not let this stand. Remember, they start with the least popular and they move on from there. Am I wrong?
You're absolutely right.
So, Michael, you're going to have to leave us with the capitalist thought of the day.
I will. And I'm going to tell them about your upcoming microphone, which I think is big news.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I should tell them about that.
You can tell them. Go ahead.
Yeah. So even if you're hearing me on a fuzzy mic now, I don't know exactly what the problem is with my microphone, but I did order a new one. It should be coming today. And hopefully my boomer adjacent ass will be able to set it up tomorrow so that you can hear me clearly, screaming capitalist principles into your ear. All right, Mike, take it away.
Enjoy your class, sir.
Thank you. Oh, I want to hear your.
Okay. All right. I'll do it. Okay.
Before I go.
For the second day in a row, I'll be the one that gives the capitalist thought of the day.
Yes.
The capitalist thought of the day is this: if your philosophy is based on reason, if you have rational principles, you should fight for those principles. You should fight for your values. Don't let the naysayers be a deterrent. Even when they tell you you need to shut up, no one wants to hear it. That's probably when people need to hear it the most. Say it, do it, be it. Be rational. And with that, Mark, you can take us out. If you're going to be here, then just take us out and we'll go.
That's beautiful. Yeah, shout reason and liberty from the rooftop, folks, no matter what people say. So you'll be with us here tomorrow for episode 11. We're likely going to bring you bad news, but it'll always be tempered by the sweet medicine of capitalism and real solutions so that you don't have to feel befuddled or lost, because there is hope, folks. And
plus, we're very charming guys. I mean, let's not leave that out of the equation.
Plus we're charming folks. So come on in, listen to us, challenge us if you want. We like being challenged. I don't think we read enough of the comments. I think sometimes we should take some moments out of the day to read some of the comments and address some of these comments, because I think some of them are very good. And we'll do that next time on episode 11. Until then, folks, always remember to check your premises. Peace.